Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Galactic Tarot. I'm sitting here today with the Matt Kahn. So excited about this today. Matt, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, such a pleasure having you here, brother. Yeah, it's you're going to be coming to the event, of course, Sedona Starseed Summit.
Oh, yeah.
It's just yeah, it's a little serendipitous you being here. Just the whole how many times I've had your name come up for somebody who keeps to themselves. I'm a firm believer in getting my own downloads and keeping to myself. So my personal waters don't get muddied, if you will. Not that I don't think it's great when people, go around and get information wherever they can. But for me, my team has always had me focusing on, being more introverted in that way when it comes to watching this channel and that channel. But your name would always come up. People would say, "Did you get this from Matt's video? Did you where'd you?" Because especially certain things on love and twin flames and soulmates. So it's such a pleasure to have you here and coming to the event.
Oh, well, it's truly an honor, and we're all connected to the quantum field, and we're at a time in history where more expanded heart center teachings are coming to the planet, more awareness and respect to the nervous system. We're becoming more trauma informed, and we're becoming more aware as a society. And so I think that it's exciting that, more of us are tuning in and transmitting wisdom and consciousness from this expanded heart center place for all that it's doing for us individually and all for it's doing to really expand the consciousness of humanity at truly the most fertile time of awakening in the history of mankind. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like any time we've going through this cycle of life, I feel like humanity's made it further at this point than we ever have at any point before.
Sure. And, at this time, a lot of people look at the world and it looks like it's falling apart. I like to call this chapter of life the end of denial. And so really, it's not as if things are getting worse. It's that we're just becoming fully aware of what has been under the surface, swept under the rug. And so we're all finally on a collective level as individuals facing collectively what needs to be faced, because how can we heal what needs to be healed if we don't first see what needs to be seen? So even though it's an intense time, I'm honoring the fact that it's the end of denial.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's, I agree with you 100%. I hear a lot of people, when they see the Mandela effects, they think it's something evil, or they think it's the devil. They think it's CERN. For me, these are signs that we've made it to a different place. We've made it to a different reality. I think there's things more like our soul, or the original creator of our soul, or God, or source, or universe, whatever the vernacular truly is. Yeah, I think it's something that was left here for us to show us this isn't how you remember it for a reason, because we're in a new reality, and these things they're positives to me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like in our past when we're older and we think back to our earliest memories, and obviously not speaking in terms of traumas, but if you think back to, a time in your life where maybe you're 5 years old or 8 years old, at that point, you only had a certain perspective, a certain amount of options. At that age, there was only so much you could do, right? And then in an older age, you look back and you go, oh, wow, if I only knew what I knew now back then. And I think it's kind of the same way in a quantum physics level, where we remember things the way we remember them when we were in that moment in the first person point of view. Then as we move to the second and third person point of view, and more time and distance takes place, we're moving in through parallel timelines and moving in such an expansive evolutionary way that we tend to think back on the past, and we're actually remembering it from who we are now versus who we are when we experienced it. And we're actually always looking back at a different angle or viewpoint. It's a fascinating thing to realize that our memory is housed in our imagination. So anytime we are reflecting on the past in some slight or drastic way, we're actually imagining it slightly or drastically differently. So I think there's obviously, for all of us, things are changing in such radical ways. And it's because we're not at the same consciousness we were in the beginning. And when we do that, we're constantly going to look back on things differently than how it was before. And that's just an effect of our ever expanding consciousness. So I love what you said, and I totally agree.
Oh, thank you. And that was, I have to just one more time, that like really gave me truth pimples. Our memory is housed in our imagination. Is that
That's
what you
right.
said?
Yeah.
Oh God, I love that. I gotta like write that down after this. Thank you, Matt.
Right. So there's this thing called revisionist history, where people tend to remember things only based on the emotional state they're currently in. And when we, or if you ever heard a relative tell a story, my family would do this. And every time they tell a story, they'd embellish something a little bit more, a little bit more. And then we would call them on it going, that's not what happened. And they legitimately are like, that's how I remember it. And so what's interesting is when you realize memory and imagination are actually housed in the same place, which is why sometimes when you're like, I've had relatives who have had memory issues. And then we've talked about imagination and creativity, and it seems to be on the same level of inaccessibility, easy for me to say. And so it's interesting when we really realize memory and imagination are housed in the same location without needing to even go deeper than that. Just feel what happens in your body.
I know.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah, no, I'm literally having all these flashbacks from like mom and grandpa. Like, like every time they explain the food at the restaurant, the piece of fish gets bigger. Like,
oh my God.
Their hands aren't even fitting on my screen right now.
By the time I was an adult, do you know how many miles it took my parents to walk to school uphill both ways? I mean, my God, you know. So
the mileage.
The mileage, just the pure mileage.
Snow and
uphill both ways, snowing, like just wow.
God, I love that, Matt. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do you have any like inkling what you'll be talking about at the event yet, or is it going to be like more of like an open channel? How do you see your talk going in on November 20th?
Wow, November 20th. My God.
I know it's so far in the future. It could shift completely also. Keep in mind, everybody.
Well, each day, you know, I experience each day like its own incarnation. So like that literally is lifetimes away from me.
I know it's like
so I think for me, what I do is I get on stage or even the day of the event, and I just start to feel the energy of the people who are alive there, you know, fully present in person. And I just start to feel into the group energy, and I start to kind of receive impressions, or sometimes I just walk on stage and I receive the impressions and I just go. So for me, what I will speak about will be a live transmission of healing energy, specifically transmitted for everyone who's in attendance live. And if there's any kind of online accessibility, of course. So, you know, part of the gift is to speak in a way where every single person feels like I'm speaking just to them. And not quite sure how I do what I do, but I'm just blessed that I have the ability to do it. And in several lifetimes from now, when it's November, I will be with you and we will be laughing about memory and imagination, and I will transmit something historic.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So excited. If you could, I would just love to, and now we're going like many lifetimes in the past. I would just love to, I don't know if, I'm sure you saw it. We shared the link with you, but my origins show. I just love interviewing people and hearing about like what was the dark night of the soul, or what was your awakening? Because I just feel like it's so, for me, like on my healing journey, it's been so healing to share what I've gone through, because it's helps other people be like, if they're going through that right now, it makes them feel less alone. So if you could just for a minute, I'd love to hear about your like the beginning of this journey for you and how that started.
Well, you know, I always talk about this story when I was 8 years old and had about experience, which I tell a lot. But I think, you know, with regard to what you just said and what kind of stirs in me, there was a period where, so I experienced some very profound awakening experiences. When you read about people's awakenings or hear about it, they tend to talk about the flash of realization, the remembrance of oneness, everything dissolved, and I was one with all things. That's all true. But then there's a process you go through where it's now that consciousness is awakened, anything that is housed within you on an atomic, subatomic, cellular level that is not at that vibration must be cleared out of your field emotionally, sometimes physically and otherwise. So as a positive repercussion of awakened consciousness and the Kundalini energy rising from the base of my spine, I went through a process where every day, the only thing I could do to function was do intuitive readings. So I was booked to do intuitive readings.
Mm.
And then in between each reading, people didn't know that I was wrapped in a blanket, literally shivering, feeling like each breath is my last, like I'm about to leave my body, get catapulted out of this form and go back to heaven. And at every breath, I felt like I was on the razor's edge of life and death. And I went through this every day for 2 years. And every day I died over and over again for 2 years until there was really no one to die. There was no identity of death. There was just perpetual death. And then from perpetual death, I noticed that instead of watching things end, I'm actually watching things begin. And so then the shift went from endless endings to infinite beginnings. And then I became an energy of pure rebirth, an energy of rebirth that no longer was born or went through the process of dying, but a rebirth of this embodied consciousness to be able to transmit the healing energy that both heals the body, heals the emotional body, relaxes the mental body, and also awakens our consciousness. And so I went through this really radical process to create enough space so I could be just this living transmission of healing energy to assist the world in this most incredible time.
Wow. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
That's
you're welcome.
Beautifully spoken. Awesome. So yeah, congratulations on the book sales and everything with the book. I saw you on the cover of Forbes magazine. I was like, there he is. That's our brother. So exciting.
That was so surreal when I saw that. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
like, you know, just to be interviewed for Forbes. And what was really impressive for me was the person that interviewed me. I'd never met them before.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best interviews I ever did. And it was because this person, you know, was interested in my subject, but they came from a whole different educational background. But we were able to just have this incredible conversation where it wasn't about me trying to move them from their standpoint or vice versa. It was just about an exchange. And it was just, and it was a beautiful, not only connection, but it was a beautiful connection between two heart-centered men who were just kind of meeting in the middle of what we can do to reform education for the greatest evolutionary benefit of mankind. And I just, you know, just the whole experience, not just Matt was on Forbes magazine, but just the care and the consciousness of that exchange really just, it made it such an incredible moment in my career, not because of the name's Forbes, but because of just the gravity of that exchange was something really, really meaningful for me.
Yeah. And like, what a sign for this awakening,
Yeah.
Aquarius, whatever you call it, to like,
Sure.
you know, to have like you know, Forbes magazine, see you on the cover, like once again, another like sign, like we've made it. And like, we're on our way, to more ascension. And it's regardless of what we see on the news or regardless of what we're paying attention to outside, it's going to just continue to get better and better every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we're living in extraordinary times. And I think that living in a world where people can be respected for their talents, their ambitions, and their consciousness, I think is exactly the kind of world that we're all ready for. And I think that sometimes we have to be really absorbed in unconsciousness to actually force different aspects of consciousness to awaken. And so I think we're just living in a time where it's time for the inner beauty of each human being, the talents, consciousness, and ambitions can be really heralded and highlighted. And really, as we start to live this world more like it's a global village, it's not a matter of who is and who isn't, but everyone has a gift to contribute. And we all have something incredible to share for the benefit, the longevity, and the expansion of this global village. And so that's the kind of world I want to live in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even just for me, like trusting the gifts that are on the way to those other gifts.
Right.
Like, you know, that's been a lot of what I've had to do to like kind of like hack myself out of this whole belief structure that was projected on me, and finding and unhooking this whole jack of all trades, master of none that so many people said to me. Just because like I started making my jewelry while I was personal training, it was like people made it seem like I could only do one thing. And that's like one of like the greatest messages I try to share with everybody is like, you know, do the thing, because you have no idea which piece of it might be not life purpose, but it is life purpose because it's on the path to it.
Sure.
And whether or not this thing succeeds or we consider it failing, it's like there is no failure for me, because it's like instead of us sitting and wondering what if, like to do that thing or move to that place or ask that person out on a date.
Right.
Now we know, and we can get on to like the next stage of life.
Well, and even just as a fun example of what you just said, let's imagine that there was someone you were attracted to that you asked out on a date.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked them out on a date, right? You put on your most incredible auric presentation, right? Got your chakras all shiny. Got to shine those chakras. And you walk up to the person, smelling fantastic, looking your best, right? You muscle tested, vibration through the roof. And you ask them out on a date. And they say politely, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on an ego level, we walk away feeling the devastation of rejection. Maybe we feel embarrassed. Maybe we feel the loss of what could have been. But what's interesting on a quantum level, or on a higher level beyond ego, is that in the same moment afterwards that we're processing the loss of an unrequited fantasy, a fantasy left unfulfilled in that moment. In that moment, even if you had taken a separate timeline and a relationship with a person, what you would have gained evolutionary wise from that relationship coming and going, no matter how long or short lived it was meant to last, whatever experience, whatever education, whatever expansion you would have received from that relationship, you actually have the moment after they say no thank you. So what's amazing about living our dreams, I want everyone to live their dreams. I support the fulfillment of every dream. Of course, this is Earth. This is where we come to bring our dreams to life.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
At the same time, to know that when we move towards something and we say yes to something that doesn't seem to say yes to us, we are never void of what we truly would have benefited from experientially, no matter what the response is. It's just our egos say, if it doesn't play out the way I envisioned it, then I don't receive what I would have gotten had it played out. The ego is fixated on thinking I'm only going to gain as long as I win. And if I lose, then it's the absence of gain. But in truth, no matter whether things are going to play out this way or that, whatever you would have benefited from by having it, you always manifest, even when it seems like having it is denied. And I think that that's a miraculous thing we can really open up to. It's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was beautiful. Once again, beautifully spoken.
Thank you.
I'd expect nothing less.
Oh, I'm just trying to show up and share for the galactic tarot. Just trying to bring it.
You are bringing it, brother.
So.
Could you just for a moment, would you mind like explaining what the ego is for you, or where that comes from? Or
Sure. I think in a healthy place, because there's such thing as too much ego, right? Which is exaggeration, embellishment, inflation, righteousness, entitlement. That's inflated, too much ego. Then there's too little ego, which is insecurity, ungrounded, self-doubtful, distrusting of our instincts. These types of things, circular thinking, obsessive compulsive patterning. That's not having enough ego. So in a healthy, balanced place, ego is actually a form of psychic protection. It's how we embody this form. It's how we remember to put on pants when it's snowing. It's how we remember the difference between a bedroom and a living room. And really, ego helps us regulate the comparing and contrasting of environments in time and space. And if you had no ego, you would literally walk around like a wild person. You wouldn't put pants on. Everything would be the same. And so ego helps us to organize and categorize distinctions of difference. When we have ego in a healthy way, we're advocating for ourselves. We're leaders in our lives. We have an ingrained form of psychic protection. If something doesn't feel right, we don't move towards it. If something doesn't feel like it's connecting, we take a step back. So I really think that ego is not necessarily a negative thing. I think a lot of times when people talk about ego, they're talking about exaggerations, embellishments, right? Too much ego. And of course, whenever there's too much ego on a spiritual path, that just kind of starts to ruin the whole party, because
Same thing. Yeah.
the ego is such a beautiful expression of our consciousness. The ego is the one who's on the journey that your body is on. Your ego is the one being transformed by the consciousness you're expanding. Your ego is the one that's finding safety from the love you offer to your heart. And what happens is that we innocently deny ourselves the right to hold space for our ego because we're too busy believing it's who we are. So the healing journey is an aspect of awakening. Awakening is how we make sense of our healing journey. And instead of them being two separate facets, I like to see them as two interconnected levels of evolutionary expansion. And that really, we're not here to abandon our egos. We're also not here to overly indulge our egos. We're here like a parent learns how to have a relationship with their child. They're not here to be such a pushover that they can be manipulated. And they're not here to be so harsh that they're being unloving to the being that they're here to love, as only they love it. So in the same way, the beauty of this type of work with our hearts is allowing every person to learn how to make choices the way parents make choices. Because when you're a parent, you're not making choices just for you, but with the awareness of what's good for you and this impressionable, innocent being. And I think if we all started making decisions as if our inner child is our actual child, I think we would come into alignment so much easier, because really it's the ability to live not just for ourselves that allows our consciousness to expand, allows our choices to be more sustainable, and allows us every day in our consciousness and in our actions and our words, how can we start making forward steps into recreating the world we truly wish to see? And I think it really begins with learning to treat our inner child as an actual child.
Yeah. God, I love that, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like too little ego, and we wouldn't even like remember or think to eat.
Right.
It's like, that's the way I've always seen it, with like, talking with like, my guides, my other versions of myself, if you will.
Right.
It's necessary. And it's not even like I used to say when I was younger, a necessary evil, but I agree with you so much. Like even as I look at things multidimensionally, like whether or not this like multidimensional interpretation that I have is me like speaking with different facets of myself, my subconscious mind, or if these aspects are truly here and existing that I'm speaking with, it's like this process that keeps happening is I find something that's holding me back, or I find something that I don't even realize I'm reaching for. And, I become stronger, and I become more loving, and I become more patient, and I become more truthful, and I work on my boundaries. Like I just see so many people right now also at like this present moment of human ascension, like it's so exciting to see people working on their boundaries that they weren't like almost weren't even able to 3 months ago, 6 months ago. It's huge, and it's massive, and it's like you said, like when we were talking about earlier, the story being embellished by a grandparent or parent. It's like before we used to just like stay quiet, but now it's like, well, I remember it like this, or like having a loving way to have that conversation without like feeling like something's being lost, or feeling we're taking something away from anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, I love everything you're saying, and I think boundaries. In the beginning, like everything, the ego tries to kind of control something. So of course the ego hears about boundaries, and the ego now has its new, karate to master, and people kind of can sometimes come out the gate with boundaries a little aggressively, like when someone first takes karate class. But what's interesting about boundaries is, like let's say you were hanging out with a friend when they were totally sick, like just constantly sneezing and coughing, and you want to be there for your friend, and your friend says, gosh, I'm so sorry. I love you being here, but I'm just feeling so not well. And I don't want to be around you when I'm just this, I need to focus on me. And you excuse yourself from the conversation, because if someone is unwell enough, you just want to give them space to be with themselves, and we wish them well, of course. Now, imagine you're in a situation where someone is not physically unwell, but they're emotionally or mentally unwell. And you say, hey, I'd love to be here with you, but I'm feeling like the best thing for both of us is for me just to give you some space and come back and reconnect at a different time. So
Absolutely.
it's one thing we can do in our society when someone's physically unwell and to give space. But I think what we're learning on a societal level that it's okay to give space for other things that are being worked out mentally and emotionally, and that what we have to learn as sovereign beings is there's a way I can support people that benefits people. There's a way I can support people that actually feeds the patterns that I'm holding space for the resolution of. And I have to always make sure that the most loving thing I'm doing for another person is equally an act of love towards myself. So if I'm showing someone kindness and care by sharing energy with them, I don't actually have to give to another person, then I'm doing something kind for them
Yeah.
while dismissing kindness for myself. So I think what we're learning in our boundaries is what is the choice that I can make that is equally kind for me and the other person. And once we start learning how to compromise within our own consciousness, then our
Yeah.
ability to interact with others becomes a lot easier, even when we're at a standstill of
Yes.
differences.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah, no, it's that goes right back to like the healer needs to heal themselves before
That's
they
right.
heal others. And just like something that's been coming up for me over the past few months or so has been like, if I expect my reality, if I expect my family, my loved ones, if I expect my universe to hold me accountable,
Hmm.
I need to hold my universe accountable. Like if I
Hmm.
want to continue ascending from this point, which I know is inevitable,
Yeah.
that's why this whole push onto boundaries and almost like, at lack of better words, being more strict with myself about that food I know I shouldn't be eating,
Sure.
that thing I know I shouldn't be drinking, that thing I
Sure.
know I shouldn't be thinking,
Right.
like all of these things. It's like it's really helped me to like it almost had like certain people in my reality just melt away because they were like, it was like there's this nonverbal conversation that was like, wait a minute, he's holding his reality accountable, and I'm not ready to be held accountable in this present moment.
Sure.
So I
Sure.
had like it's a lot of like layers just falling off of me and falling out of my physical reality and spiritual. And yeah, the boundaries is massive.
It really is. It's a really massive thing. And I think it's really important that when we look at boundaries, we look at even the deeper teaching of it. And the deeper teaching of it is let me fill my life with all the things that I need to be whole within myself. Then, with the space that's provided after I have set up my life
Yeah.
to fulfill me, then I can see where I have the room for other people and where and how they fit. And so I think what's interesting is that we're all trying to figure out how we fit in each other's lives,
Yeah.
but we haven't actually set up for the most part what your life looks like when you're a fully functioning being who is using the majority of your life to allow you to find wholeness within yourself. Because once it's for you to be whole, and at a certain point, the gift of awakening is it doesn't really require that much for you to be whole. But it allows you to see where do I have room for other people? What do I have to give? What do I have to share?
Yeah.
Because what happens when we're in a codependent pattern is we tend to manage other people's experiences because we're trying to avoid rejection, avoid abandonment, making sure that, God forbid, no one misunderstands what we say and we hurt someone's feelings from a moment of disappointment. But instead of managing people's experiences, we just manage expectations. So if someone wants something from us, but we don't have the time to give, we manage those expectations by letting someone know, here's what I have to give. I cannot help you. I'm so sorry. And I think it's just a very powerful way. And I think something interesting that was dropping in a couple minutes ago that correlates to this is that if we are fully there for ourselves the way we can be, we don't need other people to be there for us a kabillion% of the time. And that oftentimes we hold this expectation that, oh, this person's going to love me. They need to be there for me every second of my experience. And what's interesting is that you can manifest the most loyal, connected, heart-centered beings once you are there for yourself to the degree that you're expecting or wanting someone else to be there for you. So once we are finally there for ourselves the way other people cannot be, then we find ourselves manifesting the types of connections, even just friendships,
Yep.
even just the versions of our family members or beloved connections that can reflect the light of wholeness that we have found within ourselves.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that comes up very often in even like in tarot readings and things like that. I have to tell the person, like, they might be like sad that somebody hasn't shown up in their love life, but I'm like, this is giving you the opportunity to make yourself sparkle, to work on yourself, because I mean, from what I've seen, at least, I'm sure many of you at home, whatever mental state or whatever I was going through, I met somebody that was in a similar reflective state. Because that's, I mean, that's all that would be fair. It wouldn't be right if we were like meeting. So like, we're really happy, they're really sad. It's like, when I was sad, I met somebody sad. When I was happy, I met somebody happy. When I was wanting spirituality, this is who would come forward. So it's like the whole like attracts like. So it's like, it makes absolute so much sense what you just said. I really lot to sit with this conversation today, Matt.
A lot, you know, and I think it's one of those things where we know love is the highest vibration. We know self-love heals us. We know self-love reconnects us, and we know compassion towards ourselves is how we are able to naturally and authentically manifest compassion for others, no matter the state they're in. And, you know, we're at a point in history where there are people that have transformed themselves through love. There are some people that look at love as something I should do, but that I put off, like going to the gym. Or for me, when I was a kid, flossing my teeth was the hardest thing to learn how to do for some reason. But really, we're at a time in history where, you know, love for the past many years has become a really popular option. Once it's an option, your ego takes control of it as something that you should do, and it uses as a way of trying to, you know, because the ego wants to be loved. It's afraid of being rejected. It doesn't even feel worthy enough to receive the love. So it tries to get our attention to be loved without asking for love. So it antagonizes. And so oftentimes our egos become these like internal amateur life coaches that go, hey, you should love yourself. You should love yourself. But here's the interesting thing. Your ego only takes control of love because it's become an option. What I'm suggesting is that love is not an option. If love is the only option, there is just responding with love. So the more love becomes an option, the less often we access it, and the more pressure we put on ourselves to measure up to it. The more there is one option, there is simply to love. And if outside of you cannot be where you send your love, then send it within yourself. Love can always be sent to you because you are what love comes from. And so love at this time in history has to become one of many options to the only option. Once love becomes the only option, expansion, healing, and transformation shall be your only reality.
Yes. Yeah. So to me, it's the only real house of magic. Like anything else, you know, I've looked at and deciphered and just, you know, dissolved or integrated whatever truths there are with it. It's just, it always comes back to love. Absolutely. And anytime I found any being or whatever it is, it's like, that's what was always wrong, was like love was missing.
Sure.
And like, there's some misunderstanding of what was taking place. Cause I see so often people pointing the finger outside when like, we all know, of course, like if you're finding something outside, like, I mean, for me, like all the work I've done with the archetypes and archetypally, it's like, we are that. So it's like when we're judging this thing outside of ourselves and blaming this like boogeyman or this deity or this whatever it is, this zodiac sign, you know, we hear it all. Sure. It's like we're seeing that like what we think is missing that we don't have, or we're being reminded of that thing that we have that we wish we didn't. Plain and simple for me. So it's like, so I even see that like a year ago or 2 years ago, like I was really like not even working on. I didn't want to be grounded because like as like a high empath, like it was like incinerating me to be here and feel people's stuff and my heart racing and slamming out my chest all day. I would just like go sit on top of my field, but like it was like my feet were dangling into my field, like the Otis Redding song, sitting on the dock of the bay. Yeah. And like, you know, I'd have those people tell me like, oh, you need to ground. And like, for me, the resistance that would come up like it was like obvious we need to do that. So that's why I love everybody at home. Just like see when you get the most resistant, because there'll be times that, you know, I or whoever say something that's not true, and you just go, yeah, that doesn't really hit close to home, and you just brush it off. But why is it this other thing? You're like, no, blah, blah, blah. And you like hit the button, leave the video, or like whatever it is. It's like, for me, I had to like begin to pay more attention to that stuff that I had such a resistance to, because that resistance in itself, for me and my process, isn't normal.
Right. And I think that, you know, as we start to find in ourselves, you know, and we would all, we all may phrase or label it differently. Some people may call it resistance. Some people may call it stuckness. Some people may call it darkness, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But whatever you want to call it, let's say resistance.
Yeah.
What if resistance is only the way consciousness is taking shape and form? Because it says, see the consciousness decorating this form, and knowing it is only showing up in this form called resistance, because it is how your most desperate parts beg for your love. And so if resistance is not something to avoid, but something to embrace, what happens is not only are we healing all the moments of frustration or hostility or inner confusion that we carry throughout our lifetime, but we're simultaneously helping to heal that in other hearts. Even if we can't see them or if we don't feel connected to them, we're always healing all hearts by the things we embrace and love in ourselves.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here today, Matt.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I love that. Yeah, no, my friend, one of my friends said the other day, he called this like these, like when one of these aspects comes into like one of our loved ones, he called it an activation the other day. And he said it, and I'm like right there in the conversation. And then like 5 seconds later, I was like, wait, what? And like, I was like, oh my God, like my whole body started singing. I was like, I love this. Like, instead of us looking at this person and be like, you're possessed right now, like to tell them like, oh, you're going through some sort of activation. Totally. And I was just like, wow, that was like so healing, like to hear that, and so empowering at the same time.
Well, it's amazing when we as a global village can start to become more aware and even normalize some of these moments of spiritual emergence. And, you know, what happens is, because we're all one at the core of our being, the more we can speak the truth to other people who are experiencing an emergence of truth, but haven't gotten onto the truth of it. When we let other people know the process that they're in, and we can allow people to realize, even though it may feel like you're the only person going through this, in fact, this is what we all go through. Kind of like, imagine if you were someone going through puberty and no one told you what puberty was, and you're like, no, mom, but dad, seriously, there are things happening that has never happened to another human being. I can't even talk about it. And then imagine you have a conversation. They go, well, honey, we all go through this. So it's really a beautiful thing when we can be comforted by the truth of our experience, because, you know, across the board, you can only create a problem out of something that you don't recognize as a process. And the more we learn that things are a process, the less things can be problematic. And then instead of using the spiritual journey to solve problems, we're actually utilizing the wisdom of spirituality to be a fully conscious participant in the co-creation of our journeys and the flow of our expansion, not only for ourselves, but for all beings. And so again, what an incredible time to be alive and to be here as vessels of love for all beings.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
So if you want to see Matt live, you know, I'm sure a lot of you have been looking for that excuse to come to Sedona. What better time, you know, to come out and come to Sedona, see the family, see everybody. Matt Kahn, I can't wait to see you live on stage. Can't wait to meet you in person. Thank you so much for being here today. Seriously.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to being with you guys in person. All of you.
Yes. Thank you. And it's www.sedonastarseed.com. That's where you can get more information on the event, and come out and expand, learn. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be activations.
Lots of activations.
Lots of activations. Yeah, a lot of powerful activators on the card. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. So we'll see you very soon. You know, new episodes, I'm sure, coming very soon. I'll see you guys 1st and the 15th of every month. And thank you guys. Thank you all for all the years of support, all the love. Thank you. Truly. I'm almost on the verge of tears right now.
Wow.
I'm so grateful to have been on this journey with you all for so long. And to just be sitting here with you, Matt. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Take care, everybody. See you soon.